entitled Karen Calls the Cops on Me for Trespassing on My Own Property, and I couldn't be more annoyed. First, let me provide some background. Throughout most of my life, my grandfather raised me. There wasn't anything wrong with my family life, but there were a few circumstances that would require a whole story to explain. We live in a suburban area surrounded by woods, and my grandfather owns about 10 acres of land with clear boundaries marked by stone walls. One of these stone walls separates my grandfather's land from a cul-de-sac, and until now, we've had no issues with any of our neighbors. In fact, my grandfather was usually happy to grant permission to neighbors who politely asked to use his land, as long as they had a valid reason. One neighbor had asked my grandfather if he could dispose of sticks and leaves in his yard over the stone wall. Since my grandfather rarely uses that part of the property, he agreed. This detail becomes important later. My grandfather is in great health for his age and remains strong as an ox, but he does experience occasional vertigo spells and minor health issues. Therefore, I've been assisting him more in the yard, while also enjoying outdoor activities away from crowds. Recently, I began a project to clean up the underbrush in the wooded area. A large pine tree had fallen a few months prior, narrowly missing one of the porches in the cul-de-sac. My grandfather had cut up the tree and removed the pieces from the neighbor's yard. However, the remaining debris deep in the woods couldn't be pulled out with the tractor. And so, this brings me to the point where I returned to the pine tree, attempting to clear a path back to the house. I was behind the stone wall, cutting and pulling up saplings, when I heard a glass door open and close in the cul-de-sac. An angry, entitled Karen stormed out onto her porch in a bathrobe, glaring at me and demanding to know why I was there. She declared that I couldn't be on her property and accused me of trespassing. When I asked her why I wasn't allowed to be there, she responded with, "It's because you're trespassing, idiot! Do you think you can just hang out in the woods behind my house while my kids are inside? Get out of here right now before I call the cops." At that moment, I was trying to gather my thoughts, unsure of what to say. I understood that seeing someone in the woods behind your house could be unsettling, especially if it's an unfamiliar sight. So, I looked at her and sincerely said, "Mom, I'm sorry if I scared you. But my family owns this part of the woods. I'm just cleaning up back here. In fact, my grandfather and I were here a few months ago, taking care of the fallen tree." I assumed it was merely a misunderstanding and decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Little did I know she was about to make a complete fool of herself and cause more problems than she ever anticipated. She replied, "Don't be ridiculous. Those were laborers hired by my boyfriend's dad. You don't own this land. My boyfriend's dad owns all of this." As she gestured around her, she arrogantly stated that we would both be arrested for trespassing. At that moment, I was taken aback, questioning whether I was dealing with a genuine idiot. After all, beyond the property boundaries, the woods are owned by the town water plant and have no public access. Moreover, I was offended that she referred to us as laborers. So, I looked her squarely in the eye and responded, "Well, I guess you'll just have to call the cops then, because I'm not moving. I don't care what you, your boyfriend, or your boyfriend's dad have to say about it." I shrugged and leaned back against the wall, reaching for my phone to call my grandfather and update him on the situation. He assured me that he would be there in a few minutes and asked me to stay put. In a dramatic fashion, she proceeded to dial 911, claiming that a shady individual was on her property, refusing to leave, and that she feared for her life. At that point, my nerves started to kick in, even though all I had on me was a hooked branch cutter. I decided to call the non-emergency police number and briefly explain the situation as a land dispute that had escalated, emphasizing that I was unarmed and waiting on my own property. The officer reassured me that the matter would be resolved when they arrived, but it didn't do much to ease my anxiety. Just then, I heard my grandfather's car pull up, and I saw him walking through the yard towards us. The entitled Karen looked up and exclaimed, "What?" "Stay," "You cannot come into my yard," my grandfather growled back. "Keep your mouth shut, you idiot." He climbed over the wall to join me on my side, then confronted the woman, saying, "Now, who on earth do you think you are? And why are you yelling at my grandchild?" The entitled Karen repeated her claims, asserting that her dad owned all the land, and that both of us would be arrested for trespassing. My grandfather let out a dramatic, indignant laugh as he proceeded to explain to her that she was in for a shock, because, no, he did not own the land. They engaged in a heated back-and-forth exchange for a few minutes, until 2 police cars arrived, with 3 officers stepping out and walking into the yard. Upon their arrival, she started screaming again about our alleged intrusion into the woods behind her house, where her kids were visible from inside. The officer looked at my grandfather and asked if we owned the property behind the wall. My grandfather confidently responded yes, and pulled out his wallet to show his address. I took up my phone and opened Google Maps to display the property lines associated with that address, extending into the woods and ending at the stone wall. The officer agreed with our explanation, and we clarified that our purpose was to remove the fallen tree and any remnants of it. It's worth mentioning that the house belongs to the man my grandfather allowed to dump leaves and sticks over the wall onto our property. Eventually, that man arrived and reprimanded the entitled Karen for harassing us, while we were simply trying to clean up. Throughout the ordeal, the entitled Karen persisted in her claims, viewing my grandfather as a creepy old man, which left me seething with anger. When everything settled down, the entitled Karen was later evicted for multiple reasons, with this incident being the final straw. Frankly, considering all the circumstances, I have absolutely no sympathy for her entitled behavior. How crazy and irrational was it for her to freak out over someone trying to clear a fallen tree, and then make a complete fool of herself when the actual owner of the property intervened and told her to shut up. I commend the original poster for standing their ground and not allowing a strange entitled Karen to boss them around. What are your thoughts on this encounter with the entitled Karen? Have you ever experienced a similar situation where someone wrongfully accused you of trespassing or claimed ownership over your property? Share your stories and opinions below. Thanks for watching.